Okay, welcome to the October 17th regular council meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Motion to call the meeting to order. So moved. Second. Okay, all in favor, carried. Okay, with that, we'll move to item number 2, and that's closure of the council meeting. Subject to A, legal and section 90.1, 90.1D, G, I, K, and N. We have a motion to move into close. Second. All in favor? I opposed, carried. Okay, if you'll close off the session. Thank you. How you doing? Sure. Okay, welcome back to the October 17th regular council meeting. And we've just come out of our closed session. There is nothing to report at this time. We'll move. Do we have a motion to open the meeting? Second. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the adoption of the agenda. Motion to adopt the agenda. Moved. Okay, second. And any edits, additions? No.
I sent in a request after the minutes were, the deadline for minutes was Thursday at noon. Friday, I sent in a couple of matters came up. Friday at the House on Community Forum and also in the village update. And I'm wondering if I could add House on Community Forum under new business. Yes. And the village update under new business.
Okay.
So if I could,
Yes.
that needed to be included before the agenda was adopted, because what you just done is adopted it as it was. So what you need to do is pretend that didn't happen.
Okay.
And the question is, are there any amendments to the agenda? So these are late items, right, that are being proposed under late items to be added.
Okay.
Wouldn't we first need to rescind the adoption?
I don't think it was voted on.
Wasn't voted on yet. So, okay. So you're proposing House Sound update.
Also,
That would be in
date,
reference to Fridays.
if the mayor would be involved in that because we both attended.
Okay. And village update.
Date.
Okay. Any other items? Okay. Anyone else? I have Finance Committee update report. I don't need to discuss it, but I'd like to put it on table to just to as table items to receive. Sign up over the weekend.
Just to be received?
Yeah, just to receive. I don't need this.
Receive.
Okay. All right. Any other items? Okay, I'll call a question.
Just can we have some discussion here, Phil?
Sure.
If these are on table items, I haven't seen anything. Seems to me they should have been included in the agenda. I'm not comfortable approving something where there's no opportunity to study and prepare for it. So I would ask that council members submit their stuff if they want it on the agenda within the proper timelines.
Okay. Councilor Broughton?
The House on Community Forum was on Friday. The deadline for the agenda was noon on Thursday. So it would not be possible to list the topics because the event did not happen. The village update question that I have is regarding the village update of Friday. The deadline for the agenda was Thursday. So therefore, I think it qualifies as a late item.
It could also be discussed at the.
Okay. All right. In regards to the Finance Committee update, I'm just putting it on table. I'm not looking for a resolution or anything. So
I think we've spoken about this over and over about trying to get some written reports. And being given the time to read them. And then if you need them on the agenda, you bring them to the agenda. So I think we should stick to that, stick to the 12 o'clock deadline. Michael, on the House of before, there's always going to be something that happens after the deadline. It's just the nature of it. Unless there's something really pressing there that can't wait 2 weeks, I think we should just all start following, the agreed procedure, and it's just fair on staff and others, and it gives everyone a chance to review materials, get informed before we come to a meeting in general. So I'm against adding it.
Okay, Councillor Califf.
My only question is, I do agree that we do need to stick to procedure here and try to get these meetings moving as expeditiously as possible. Ross, a question for you. If Ken wanted to Mayor Barry would like to just provide us with this information to take home, does it really need to be on the agenda? Could it be on? Yeah, thank you.
Through you, either is fine. If it's an information item, where there's no action required, that's reasonable. It can also be emailed council, that's also a reasonable approach, given that there's no direction, no resolution, no involvement of council with regard to the matter. If there was direction sought, something, the mayors are going to request something of council, direction or anything else now or in the future, then it should be added as a.
So would best practice then be maybe have Mayor Barry email us the information that he was going to provide, and then it can be placed on the next agenda. Therefore, the residents and the public will have the same access that we would have.
I think through you, so there are a lot of procedural inconsistencies, which is absolutely normal with a new council. Happens always and all the time. These things are really tricky and they can trip up councils, can trip up staff. What I propose to do is provide sort of a cheat sheet around this stuff so that procedurally it's easier for council to follow this stuff. So part of that will include, for instance, Marina sending out emails as a reminder on Tuesdays?
On Mondays.
On Mondays, just reminding everyone of the deadline. Should council choose to consider training in the future, there is going to be the opportunity to discuss options around how council bring matters to the table. Some councils will, in their procedures by law, include provisions like notices of motion. So you don't have that in your procedures by law. That council always, other than with specific exceptions, will always provide a council report. And a lot of jurisdictions have it's like a staff report format. Takes time, it's a hassle, but that also reduces the number of things council bring to the table, which makes it easier.
So then, for example, Councilor Broughton, that the House on Forum was Friday, could have then by Thursday at noon potentially have put on the agenda verbal report to be provided in after attendance of House on Forum. Would that be appropriate? If I'm getting too
there are so many iterations. So some councils will have a section in their agenda called council reports. And it's a standing section, and everyone goes around the table and talks about what they've done, the meetings they've attended, yada, yada, yada. And it keeps everybody, including the public, up to speed with those key things that they have attended or learned or whatever. That's one option. Again, these are sort of procedural improvements that I think are warranted, will improve the way you do what you do. And I think my recommendation to council would be to give some consideration to a session where you can sort of explore these, dissect these best practices so you can fine tune what you do.
Okay. Yeah, I think Councillor Broughton actually did send off some items for the agenda. Unfortunately, they slipped through the cracks or something. So, hopefully, you're gonna put us on the right tracks here.
Gonna be on the right track.
So, we'll call the question then, we'll adopt the agenda. Motion to adopt the agenda with the amendments as proposed. All those in favor? Okay, I'm in favor.
Sorry, what?
The motion is, you proposed.
My motion.
It's your motion.
Okay, I am in
So
favor of my motion.
Okay, opposed.
Opposed.
Okay,
I say we keep it clean moving forward.
okay, but just for the record, those were provided on Thursday and previous meetings. There was items provided that were not put on the agenda. So if we don't have the leeway on this, then I guess we'll figure that out.
Could I just say
The
something?
information was provided Friday. morning.
Friday,
Yeah,
right.
Friday morning, not Thursday.
Friday morning, so
Right.
Yeah, no, you did say Thursday. Yes,
Yeah.
it was Friday.
All right. Apologies on that.
Yeah.
Okay, next item, public participation.
Wait, hold on, we need to adopt the agenda as it stands first.
Okay.
Motion to adopt the
Motion
agenda
to
as it
adopt the
stands.
agenda.
Second,
Opposed.
All in. You
Sorry,
call the question.
all in favor.
Sure.
Put your hands up ahead of time. I thought we were jumping right to it.
We're keen.
agenda
Sorry.
finally adopted?
Carry.
And it's adopted.
Okay, public participation. Anyone in the gallery? Okay, you'll take the podium, please.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's well. I was here about a month ago, I think, several weeks ago. And one of the asks I requested from the council, from the mayor and CEO, was the establishment of the North Calvin Grove Parking Committee. I'm here to find out what progress has been made, because this is not just, I was here a few weeks ago, this is the issue for the past 18 years. And we're going to continue coming here to understand what progress has been made and receive some updates from the committee.
Okay. Mr. Blackwell, are we answering questions now or? What's the usual procedure on that?
So good, normally it's public comments is just that. It's not intended in a council meeting to have back and forth discussion. It's not the purpose of council. In my experience with public participation, that's at the end of a meeting after the meeting is closed. And usually the comments are specific to the matters on the agenda. If residents have issues not on the agenda with regard to the business of the council of the day, there's email, there's face-to-face meetings, there's many other opportunities. That's my experience with it. So this is I've never seen this before. So all I can defer to is the fact that it would not be in my experience that there would be a back and forth discussion.
All right, there has been a lot of discussion on parking committees and so on, and I think probably the best is to take our CEO's advice, and rather than get into a debate on this, we'll move to the next speaker unless you have other comments to make.
No, and I appreciate with all the respect, this is definitely not maybe it's not format, but you haven't been here for the past 18 years, again, with all the respect. The reason we didn't have this level of the back and forth, the reason we asked, because we feel like the politics, where everyone's playing the game of the politics, and we're just a normal people. We're just trying to find peace and tranquility where we live. And we don't want to keep coming back and forth with this sort of debate. We just need some answers about, we voted for you, we're trusting you, and we just don't want any more, diplomatic answers or politics. Last time they said strategy sessions, have the strategy sessions. I mean, this was you that you mentioned strategy sessions would be discussed, and the decision will be made out of that. So where are we going to get that information? I'm more than happy to get that information from another format or another media. And when the strategy session will happen, what's the output, and why does it take 8 weeks? Because I work for the government myself, and for many government agencies I've done and currently I'm working. And I asked the questions, and why does it take 8 weeks? They said,
Okay,
the matter is this is small, it's going to take that.
thank you. And I'll just, we're going to move on after these comments, and I'll just let you know that I have had a discussion with the CAO today about this specific issue, and we'll be moving forward on items where we can. Okay, so we are moving on it. But at this time, as the CEO said, it's not the format for a debate. So
May I ask, what is the best format? I appreciate, investors.
he mentioned, Mr. Blackwell mentioned writing a letter. That's one avenue, or putting your name in for the 10-minute presentation. And Mr. Blackwell?
If I could, not speaking on behalf of council, I'm speaking as administrator. There are things in motion, and as soon as there is something to advise you on, you will be advised. It may not be at the speed you wish, but it will be, you will have an answer with regard to next steps. But you know, with respect, coming every council meeting saying that it's making the same appeal, it doesn't move it an issue ahead of the task. You only have a certain capacity. So it's noted, staff is dealing with the matter, and in due course, however long it takes, based on capacity, there will be outcomes, and we will certainly commit to reporting that.
I appreciate that. Can I at least ask for an order of magnitude for estimates for how long does it take?
I can't answer that, but.
Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Is
Can't
it
answer that.
8 weeks?
I
Or
can't answer that, but what I would encourage you to do is to feel free to reach out anytime, talk into my office, phone me, email me, and I'll be happy to update you on the status anytime convenient.
I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I have seen all of you. The text that signage in the parking lot that I and the people waste 4 or 5 years to have it. Why it has to be removed? Why it's not gonna be back the parking lot? Why? That's a question. In this regard, Severa unilaterally by himself make a decision to remove. He's under the CAO. And before actually we haven't union, but why can each one of you make a decision by yourself, or you're talking together, brainstorming, and not arguing, just discussion? Because argue means that who is right, who is wrong, but discussion means that what is right. This signage that shows that what time, from what time to what time, why it had been removed, because it goes to the John Gap, not the over there, not the the good behavior. And now everybody come over there and stay there, and if anybody say that this is 2 o'clock in the morning, okay, there is no time. Would you please tell me that why it has not been turned back to the document? Why? Is there any answer? I believe that we have to understand that between democracy and dictatorship, there is a fine line. Dictatorship means that someone makes a decision, do everything what you want to do. Democracy means that we talk, we find out the best solution and do that. Those things have been talking in 2 different layers, and then they decided to put it there. Did they make a mistake or not? If you go to the street, if I'm a officer on the street, the police officer, I can take all the.
You've got another 15 seconds, and then we're gonna have to move on to the next person, okay?
Just
Respectfully.
give me the answer, please. Why the parking? Can the police officer remove the parking? What's that? The signage of the light or whatsoever? No, they have to ask some. They approve it. When this signage, which is related to my life, is going to be back to the parking lot, that it has been there. It doesn't hurt anyone. If he want to make a decision by himself, no, It's not that.
Okay, Camp is, we're in the process of setting up. I know you want to meet with the staff, so we're in the process of setting that up. So we'll leave it at that. That meeting will be set up here. With that, I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay. So,
I'll be there.
you've requested that and I put in the request to the staff and there will be a meeting set up. Okay.
Meeting for returning back the silent, which is what very.
A meeting for you to share your suggestions and ideas, but we've also talked about parking committees.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we have to move on, Canvas, because.
Just tell me, the signage that it was very useful for the parking lot, why it has been removed without any
The staff will have to answer that, Canvas, but we can't answer that this evening, okay?
return it.
I've been very kind. We're going well over the time limit.
You are the mayor, can you tell them that please put it back?
Canvas, we can speak with the staff, but when you have your chance to meet with them in the coming week, you'll share that as well, and it'll be better shared with staff, because that's not going to be an item that the council looks after.
Thank you so much when you
Thank you very much.
call me, let me know that when
Okay.
you're done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the gallery? No. Maria? Anyone online that would like to ask a question? No, okay. Move on to the next item. And that is number 6, delegations, no delegations for you, okay. Approval of minutes from October 3rd, do we have a motion to approve October 3rd, second?
Second.
Discussion,
I'm good.
Yes. I just, sorry. Just one item, second. Page, it's not so much a correction to the minutes, actually, it's really a matter arising, I guess, but on the bottom of page E, of the package, the bottom of
3 of
page,
5.
sorry, yeah, 3 of 5 or 6 of 31 of the package. And I see the controllers in the audience tonight. The controller to present updates to the budget on a monthly basis. Can we put that on the action log so it stays front and center?
That. Mr. Black.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. All right, we'll call the question. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Yes. Motion carried. Business arising. There, unfinished business. We'll move to item 265, follow up with ministry regarding vacancy tax. Councilor Reuter, and he's got a report later on. Would you like to address that now or later?
No, I'll address that later in the report. Thanks.
Okay. Item number 284, local member, contact local member of parliament. And Councilor Broughton.
Okay, I spoke to both our MP and MLA on Friday, who happened to be at the House on Community Forum. And Saturday morning, I was in North Vancouver at a rail crossing which had lights and a stop sign. So I took the opportunity to take a picture of it. Really having some difficulty understanding why there's any issue with this retaining stop signs within Lions Bay, because as far as I can understand with with Transport Canada, the village has the jurisdiction regarding the placement of stop signs. So I will be bringing a motion forward to the next meeting with justification for what I'm going to be suggesting. Well, I won't say what I'm going to be suggesting, but regarding stop signs and for council's consideration and support.
Okay. Look forward to that. Item 287, update on diesel reports. Mr. Burr, I think you filed a report.
Yeah.
Did you-
I'll speak to later.
Okay, Bayview Bridge, did you want to speak to that?
Sure, there's not much.
If you don't mind, sorry, I've been asked or requested, if you don't mind joining us at the table, then the mic will be able to pick up the recording a little better, so.
Certainly.
So a minor update on the Bayview Bridge is the timbers have arrived. The contractor will be starting on Monday to replace them. As soon as that's happened, there's sort of a punch list of stuff that has to take place on the bridge to do with cleanup, to do with shoring the one end where the earth is exposed. The contractor will then move straight on to replacing the timbers on the two Lions Bay Avenue bridges across Harvey and Willow Creeks. So no promises, but I'm hoping certainly by within 2 weeks, that the 325 Bayview Bridge will be finished. Other than the time that it takes the engineer to inspect. Once that's happened, the scaffolding can come down and then it will be truly done.
Right.
I'm sorry, the other two bridges, it's that the railings are being replaced, or you say timbers? Oh, excellent.
Yeah, the ratings. I might just mention this now, although I'll bring a separate report on this later. The Lions Bay Avenue Bridge over Harvey, southwest corner is slumping. The engineers have already designed the remediation there and will let us get away with just block rather than forward concrete wall. So it's going to be pretty quick and easy, and staff will do that.
That's quite a serious concern for some residents.
Carl, question, the scaffolding needs to remain in place for the engineers to inspect.
Because they need to check torque on nuts, they need to check that all the finishing's taken place.
Sure.
It has, but they need to see it.
Okay.
Good. Any questions? Any other questions? No, thank you very much. Okay, item 294, best practices, correspondence and communication, Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you. On all of these text items that have my name attached.
What's coming?
In process. I hope that several of these are coming forward May 10th, which seems to get derailed by the minute and from day to day, is to have the procurement, new draft procurement policy from the council for the next meeting. There will be minor changes, but they're more defensible. The audit and annual report, I think council's fully aware of where that sits. So that's in process. Cost benefit analysis issue is a bigger ball of wool than I initially anticipated. So we're zooming up to the 30,000-foot level to find more improved efficiencies. So I will be happy to report back with a request for some budget money beyond what you've seen, not a lot. When I have that number, I'll bring that forward. So hopefully, again, within the next couple of weeks, I will be providing information on the climate action initiative the next day or so. And those are my items.
Okay, thanks for that update. Got a lot on your plate, and a big learning curve, so
All at once.
you're ready for it. All right.
There's a climate action meeting, committee meeting next week, Monday.
And you'd like to have that information.
Sure, you send the next day or so, we can give it to them, yeah.
Okay. Item number 302, provide RFPs to the rest of the council. That looks like that was an in camera. I think we turned that off, didn't we?
Yeah. Can I get back to 298? I know we discussed this a few times. I'm still not sure what council, what we're doing.
That was going to be the emergency response.
I thought I suggested we have an EPC meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I think that makes more sense.
I think 2 EPC.
Why don't we just change that to?
we need to get an EPC meeting
So we should strike the item.
placed. Well, we could strike it and add another item to, remind ourselves to have an EPC meeting. So,
Just maybe strike council, put EPC there.
but the action is to call a meeting.
Yeah,
Change it that way, it's fine.
Yeah, call an EPC meeting.
call me. Okay, Councilor Broughton, anything to add on Oh, sorry, that 302.
302, that will come up under Beach Park later on, so I'll
Okay,
probably just deal with it there.
all right, sounds good. Okay, item number 10, we'll move to the staff, the public works. Skipper, if you'd like to join us again and give us an update. Thanks for coming. It makes a difference with the mic.
Sure, yeah. So as requested for some time now, I knocked off two birds with one stone. This report covers off both the replacing as far as possible the municipalities' diesel fuel used with R100 and using diesel R100 in the municipal oil furnace. Rereading this in the cold light of dawn, I see it. Luckily, I managed to strike cotton with the chemistry that I thought some people may not be interested in, but perhaps you're not quite as interested in the chemistry with what I left, but apologize for that. That's it's the least I could say about the chemistry to make it make sense. As you may or may not know, renewable diesel is so-called drop-in fuel, directly replaceable for mineral diesel, fossil diesel, according to ASTM, American Society for Testing of Materials standards. Maybe the point here, I was concerned that we look at the true life cycle cost of the carbon footprint of R100 renewable diesel versus fossil diesel, because the way that renewable diesel is made in Western Canada is to use steam reformation of hydrogen. Where they get that from is methane, which is a fossil fuel. When you strip the hydrogens off CH4, you get carbon dioxide, which is a fossil carbon dioxide, not renewable. So I found the necessary research that talked to all of that. And yes, making renewable diesel is actually far more carbon intensive than making fossil diesel. It's in the burning of R100 that the savings arise, because that is 100% CO2 from fossil CO2. Bottom line is it's considered a non-greenhouse gas when you produce CO2 from renewable diesel. Fast forward to the end of the report. But we've been using renewable diesel since July. They seem to think that we told them to do that, but nobody within the municipality recalls giving them that instruction. Luckily, it's drop-in fuel, so there is no implication for our vehicles. So far, so good on that. Unfortunately, problem with renewable diesel is that it has very high gel point, meaning it gels at relatively high temperatures. Specifically, the manufacturer and our supplier do not recommend its use below 0 Celsius, which precludes its use for outdoor storage in our furnace back here, because it may gel. Even if we were to try and do a mix, a blend, the problem is we're going to use the furnace in the winter when it's cold. So it's not necessarily prudent. It's not prudent, not necessarily, it isn't prudent to run R100 in a diesel furnace.
Unless we heat the oil tank, which
Unless I thought of that, but then I thought that might actually defeat the purpose.
So how would you summarize it?
So we have taken, and we probably already know based on what they've delivered to us and on sort of our annual take. We take about 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 liters of diesel total. They gave us 4,000 of R100. It's probably about what we will take a year. And the calculation, when you go through all of it, shows that we're probably saving almost 5,000 kilograms of fossil CO2 a year by the amount of R100 that we're taking now, which is pretty good.
Does that calculation include?
The inefficiencies and the production? Yes.
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 So that's a net?
That's net. That's a real number.
Okay, and that's including the expenditures of methane at the production point?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can put your hand on your heart and say that we are emitting almost 5,000 kilograms a year less by using R100 in our trucks,
Good.
trucks and machines.
Okay, anything further before we open it for questions? No, any questions?
So we will continue to use R100 in the fleet.
Correct.
Through winter.
I haven't given up on using the furnace yet. I am thinking of some heating solutions, maybe a small holding tank, buffer tank. I don't quite know what it's going to look like. But this year's story is that we're not going to use R100 in the diesel furnace. Next year, maybe.
The Climate Action Committee has not given up on getting rid of the old furnace, obviously, because that's the big win. So let's not invest anything of any substance in something we're trying to get rid of completely.
I hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
Is the furnace above ground or buried?
The furnace and tank are above ground.
So would you ever just wrap the tank to keep it from gelling?
No, because you need internal source of heat. You know, if you're wrapping a cold tank, it stays cold.
Well, even, unless you're using and replacing with fresh fuel, which you're not doing.
No,
A little bit of heat trace would probably do it, but I don't know if we want to spend any money.
I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, a heat pump would be ultimately the better solution. Electric heat pump.
Okay,
So my recommendation is only to receive the report. Perhaps to then provide it back to the Climate Action Committee. Councillor Allen.
I'll certainly provide back to the Climate Action Committee. As I said, we're meeting next week on Monday, and if you want to come to the first
Sure.
15 minutes of the meeting or stick through it, if you're interested.
Receive the report, it's received by adopting the agenda.
perfect.
Good.
I just got one thing. I just can't believe the statement. There are no carbon credits or carbon tax rebates offered by BC for renewable energy.
3 times into the
How
meeting.
bizarre is that?
Even Alberta offers carbon credits for our renewable diesel
Right, yeah.
and a carbon tax rebate.
They may be feeling a little more flush. Yeah.
All right, we'll receive the report. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Chertoff, if you'll join us, please, and walk us through the accounts payable.
So we're just going through the materials received for the checks paid in this update, there was 2.7 million paid in the last report. And primarily all of that relates to taxes we collected on behalf of school tax, everything else. So our actual expenditures for operations were about $700,000. So we paid 1.8 million to the province for stuff that we already collected on their behalf. Our accounts payable as at today is about $200,000. And we currently have $7 million in the bank.
Comments? Okay.
Okay. Any other comments before we open it up for questions?
No, I just to speak to Councillor Abbott's question or action item. I will be providing the monthly budget actuals. It's going to be the second meeting of the month. We're just closing off September, so I'm giving you like half numbers that I give it to you today. But you'll have like basically at each month end meeting a really strong understanding of where we're at and a lot of detail which has been requested by yourself and Councillor Marcus. But at this point, as far as our payments, I'm not anticipating a significant amount of money going out in the next 3 months unless some public works projects start kicking in, primarily the CLAT building. At this point, we're pretty sound or very sound in our finances.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna few.
Okay, go ahead.
Jody, if you can have a look at this, 3 payments to services, wildlife services. And they were listed as 2 events or 3 different events, and one of them was listed twice. In that description is on one. They only did 2 events for us.
Seritas?
Yeah. Yeah, here, we'll find it for you. Well, I'll tell you the first one was in the list. Yeah, so on your first page, 2/3 of the way down, number 030616 is the first one.
Oh, Seritas, okay, right.
Okay, so there's 3 of those. And only 2 of them relate to events, education events for the best one.
Yeah.
I think the other one is the bylaw function, which should form the bylaw. Maybe just correct the description.
Yeah.
Or she got paid for an event she didn't do, but I don't think that's the case.
Okay, any other questions?
There's one odd entry here. So I'm going to the reports because now we've got 2 versions, so bouncing back and forth is awkward, but going to the report that everyone's looking at in the agenda. And the items about 4 items down. It says Up and Up Studios, and there's 2 payments exactly the same. 262.50. Which seems to me like one of those should be voided. Right?
Yeah.
And then if you look further, I'm going to Spain, if you look further in the report, there's another 262.50, which is a completely different matter. And it says in the report that one was voided. It's actually surprisingly, if I turn this into an Excel document, there are 5 payments in exactly 262.50 in this report by some coincidence. My speculation is the one for EOCP environment, which is only once, is not the one that should have been voided. I think it's the one that's stated twice up here. You may want to just look into that.
Noted. I will, I'll send you an email.
There's 3, I think, cases of paying someone back taxes because they were overtaxed or overpaid. Is there one answer on whether it's overtaxed or overpaid for all of them? Or, I mean, did we bill someone more tax than they owed? Or did someone somehow inadvertently pay twice, which I believe happened once before?
That has happened. People have overpaid and then it was reimbursement. Final sense. But to give a more precise answer, let me speak to my team and give you a precise answer.
So Joe, can I just jump in here on the 31st of August? There's an overpayment in what Neville's referring to of $5,400. That would seem astounding as an overpayment on the part of a resident. That would probably equal their entire tax.
There's another one for 2,100 and there's another one for less amount of 600.
I will provide you with a summary of exactly what happened with those payments, how it occurred, and why it was refunded.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, just a comment, maybe, Michael, I see there's a check sent to you here, and I think from the report we got, that was for going to the UBCM, $1,800.
That's right.
That was for attendance at the conference, and we're budgeting for attendance for council next year at UBCM.
So what it costs to go to UBCM, $1,800?
For 2 people, yes.
No,
2 people.
no, that's just for me. That's for one person.
Mr. Blackwell.
The cost.
If I could, as
Yeah.
far as I know, attendance fees were $995. And then there were add-ons for various additional things you could participate in. That's the best of my knowledge with regard to this. I can't speak to this line item specifically. But when I was looking at it, that's what I thought I gleaned.
The conference itself is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the Monday and Tuesday are actually, I can't remember what they're called, but there's special events
Right.
and they're per item. Yeah. We actually met with the ministry the first morning and then went to the various items.
So just to be clear, these $1,800 are just for you?
Yeah.
And didn't Ken attend as well?
I haven't submitted mine yet.
So, I mean, I think it bears pointing out that in previous councils, and you would be more familiar with this came before council in advance for approval. And discussion. Seems to me that's what we should be doing going forward. As opposed to seeing it after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Blackwell, maybe you can comment on, in the future, is it something that would be worthwhile for all councillors to attend, or are we better just sending a couple representatives, or what's your feeling on that?
Well, thank you.
Or staff?
So with regard to what I would, so there's ongoing training, there's different categories that relate to this. There's ongoing training, learning about upcoming changes to legislation and so forth. So increasing council's basic working knowledge of the changing landscape of municipal governance. That's one realm. There's another realm which is building a network of individuals that are elected in different communities that you can utilize as a resource when dealing with some of the issues that are shared across other municipalities. The third purpose is an advocacy role that applies to some of these meetings. So I pause there and say there are many meetings that council can choose to attend. FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, is one. There are local, I'm not entirely sure what the local chapter is. Vancouver Island Coastal Communities is an iteration, one of the iterations that feed into the UBCM. I would strongly recommend council give some consideration to attending UBCM. In fact, Mr. Chertoff and I have had those conversations with regard to the upcoming budget session and introducing a budget amount for council's consideration. Part of the reason for attending UBCM is all three of those. One of the key pieces that I think is a missed opportunity if it's not taken up is ministerial meetings where you sit down, it's speed dating. You've got 15 minutes with minister to go over whatever the specific issues are. It's an advocacy role. For those in particular, there's strength in numbers. My recommendation when that discussion happens is that all of council attends those ministerial meetings. The rest of at UBCM is about training and networking and so forth. Council may choose not to send everybody to that. It may be, say, 3 that may attend on behalf of council, but all of that information will be coming forward through the budget discussions, and council can give consideration as to what it wants to set aside for training and what it wants to set up in terms of who gets to go, who doesn't, whether it be cyclical, however it's going to be dealt with. Will be before council during the budget discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Just one other comment, based on what Marcus said. So yeah, in previous councils, we did exactly that. You'd have to come, say you wanted to go, and you would grill, what are you bringing back? What are you going to look at? What are you going to go do to justify the budget? I'm surprised that it's as much as that. So I'm going and multiplying that by at least 5 councillors and then a couple of staff. And so it's going to be a fair size number. So yeah, I do appreciate looking forward to that conversation. Yeah.
Could I just point out for the future that the early registration is significantly less? Like a lot less.
I would imagine too, this conference was in Vancouver, others are in Whistler or,
Yeah. Next
Out of
year,
town.
actually in Whistler, yeah.
yeah,
So that there would be a significant saving by planning, but. Yeah,
Blackwell.
you know, it's quite a commitment of time, so I wasn't sure it was gonna be able to commit, so.
So if I could just add to my earlier comments, what we would hope to do during that budget session is bring forward for 2024 all of the training considerations.
Okay,
Fs.
okay.
And everything, so council can consider the full gamut of training opportunities. It's like a smorgasbord of training and all of this stuff, and you can pick and choose what is a priority for council. I suspect it may just boil down to a UBCM, but all of the options will come forward in a report. And council can then debate and choose which ones it chooses to prioritize.
And you were mentioning that this would be something that we'd be planning, like on which individuals we wanted to reach out to. We'd reach out to them in advance. We'd sort of start that networking prior to the UBCM, and we'd end up getting more better response, I guess.
So the answer is yes. Frequently, the ministerial meetings are really important. You get 15 minutes in front of the minister to advocate for specific issues affecting the community. It's a one-on-one. They usually they defer to the ADM who follows up on any given matter if there's a follow-up. Don't be surprised that stuff disappears into the mists. But it's your opportunity to keep hammering away around issues of funding or whatever the case may be. It's an important opportunity for local governments. And I think every municipality that I know of sits down, strategizes the key issues and which ministers the community needs to sit down with for that speed dating. Who will attend of council? Frequently, it's all of council, unless you have a really big council and they'll subset. Actually, you don't want 7 people necessarily standing in front of the minister, but all of that strategy normally happens well in advance of the UBCM, because UBCM sends out requests to each municipality with regard to ministerial meetings. So you got to know who you want to meet with. Then we have to write a précis or with respect to what are the issues that council wants to cover off with each minister. You submit those for approval, and you get what you get at the end of the day. Sometimes all of the ministers, sometimes 1, 2, whatever the case may be.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Cherkoff?
I just have one question. What's with $10,000 to Next Moon Media? What
The
is-
refund of a deposit.
Oh, that was for the film.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was pretty, yeah, that's a pretty clean number. So, okay.
So can I ask you a question here? Further to the overpayment of taxes, just back to that again. I understand you're gonna look into it. One of those amounts of 600 could potentially be an overpayment, but the one that's, 5,400 or the one that's 2,000, that would seem remarkable, especially the 5,400. That would conceivably be double the tax that the resident was paying. I don't know how they would have made that mistake. So if these amounts, or at least a couple of those, were over billings, and then we are submitting our payments to BC Assessment, Metro, and TransLink based on those numbers, and that equals, as I see here, $400,000. Have we then potentially overpaid proportionately in those remittances to those different authorities, if indeed there was a miscalculation potentially?
I will come back to you with the full report. I don't want to say something that I haven't researched in respect to this.
Good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I'm pretty sure, 99%, that we haven't paid the.
You make the adjustment first.
Yeah, they calculate what we owe them independently, and so I'm pretty sure, very, very sure that's not an issue, but I will investigate that and provide you with a report.
All right.
So I just want to note though, that the TransLink payment, for example, was done on the 31st of July. And these other overpayments are later on, at least the large one, for example. So I would presume if it was a miscalculation, which then had to be refunded, that it would have been perhaps potentially be included. So that would be something to pay attention to.
I will give you a report on those.
Just one other question to you personally. I see here there's an item where you took an FOI course for $446. Why is that the case?
Just ongoing training, and it's learning online.
So would you be our FOI officer? I wouldn't think you would fulfill that role normally. So why would you be taking training in that regard?
Just general knowledge with regards to municipal matters.
Okay.
That's a good question, though. Do you have any idea of how much in courses we're paying for our staff, just out of curiosity?
So we have a budget currently for, I believe it was $10,000. We've used 7 of that so far. We've got 3,000 left remaining in that budget. Primarily, we've been spending money, except for my one course, with our municipal coordinator, bringing up on policy education, so that we can implement sound policies, robust policies for the municipality. And we're looking at other training opportunities for our staff, so that we continue to have a strong staff and developing them to support the municipality.
Okay, great.
One other question, the voided payments, what does that number represent? We've had this before in front of us. Why do we have these voided payments in front of us? On page 15. Of this package, right at the end of the report.
Oh, stop.
Okay, yeah.
597.
It's so what happens sometimes when we're printing checks,
Mhm.
a check is erroneously printed, then we've got to reprint it and then undo the one that's entered into the system.
Yeah.
It's net zero, but it's just basically somebody started printing something when we're doing a check run and then just trying to undo it within the system.
Okay. Mr. Blackwell, could you speak to how we might handle this in the future and be most efficient for, especially with our staff and for counselors? Perhaps we could have some time ahead of, away from the council meeting first for counselors to dig into the details of. What's your experience on that?
Thank you. Yeah, I would absolutely encourage council to reach out to Mr. Chirkoff or anybody else with regard to any matter on an agenda in advance. If there's sort of technical questions, we're seeking clarification. I think that's going to optimize the use of council's time at a meeting. Excuse me. I can go a little bit further. I would say these things shouldn't actually be coming to a council meeting first. They should be going to committee of the whole. So most of your agenda should be a committee of the whole agenda, not a council agenda. Council should be basically revisiting and finalizing the work of your committee of the whole. It shouldn't be opening up and debating. Like this sort of format's a committee of the whole format with a free flowing dialogue, asking some of these deeper questions and so forth. So why I say this is, excuse me, that's going to be one of the things I'm going to bring forward for council to consider is some adjustments like that. That will align you with sort of what I would refer to as normal practice. I'm not going to call it best practice, is normal, normally it's done. Because council of the whole meetings are intended to be more like working sessions. But back to your earlier question, absolutely, please feel free to reach out directly to Mr. Chirkov or myself. If you have any specific detailed questions, we're here at your service to clarify anything you need.
So how are we gonna do that in committees of the whole, if we're gonna be having a monthly report now?
If I could.
Yeah.
Thank you through you. Depending on when you get the material. Feel free to reach out before that meeting. If there are things that crop up, obviously, in the committee of the whole meeting, absolutely ask them on the fly. There are going to be things, there are going to be questions asked that spur other questions. I think that's totally reasonable. What I'm suggesting is where there are specific technical questions, please feel free to reach out in advance where you can. To get that clarification. In other words, don't feel confined to formal meetings to have to ask those kinds of questions. You're free to ask in advance if that's of value.
Okay, any other questions? No, okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate the having the other names and so on, but we got those yesterday, so it'd be helpful if, in the future ahead of that.
I did have a conversation, what I'm proposing to present to council for closed meetings is a very specific by vendor amount broken down, so you have the real meat and potatoes kind of understanding that goes into every single account. But that'll be for closed, just for privacy concerns.
Right.
And then in our council presented for open meetings, would be the general council discussion of, without any names, like what's in there. And so the public knows, okay, well, they have some understanding of what constitutes the account. But if there's any questions that arise, you have the information to respond, or have information to respond specifically if that comes up. And I've set up our spreadsheets now that I just actually did it in preparation for this in the meeting. I can now download a trial balance and give you today's date. This is our numbers for every department. Every balance sheet item.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so we'll receive that the report for information purposes. Next item, nothing for the mayor, Council Reuter, pursuant to 265. If you'd like to walk us through your report.
Sure, thank you. I like to do things brief, but for a little forbearance at the outset. It's a complex topic, but I think it's an important one. So I'd ask for a little patience while I cover this here for you tonight. Council will recall that we received in the past several pieces of correspondence during our term, exhorting us to lift the burden of the speculation and vacancy tax from the backs of residents. And let me say at the outset that it appears to me that the most affected residents under this tax will be seniors, some of whom we've heard from, and a number of others who I've been in contact with and who shared their concerns and analysis and thoughts with me on this matter. Council will also recall that I had previously reported that I've been in conversation with our MLA, who'd suggested that a reasonable course of action on this front would be to pass a resolution at council seeking an exemption from the SVT and supported by a reasoned argument as to why our village should not be subject to the SVT. The next steps could be with our MLA's assistance to communicate this intention to the provincial government, conceivably at the legislature or relevant bodies or ministers and ministries. And I anticipate having further conversations with our MLA to determine some next steps in this matter. So in brief, the material you have before you, the SVT was originally designed to focus on urban centers and areas, places where affordability and housing have for some time been in crisis conditions. Yet Lions Bay, it seems to me, should not be appraised as being one of the focuses of this within the context of the metro region and in reference to the SVT as an urban center. We don't exist within a frequent transit corridor. We've been formally recognized last year by the Metro Vancouver Board as a rural community, and that was under the definitions laid out by Metro Vancouver itself. It seems to me that there has also been a failure to consult. The SVT rightfully requires ongoing consultation with targeted communities, and the Act stipulates that. Yet, as it became apparent last year in a July meeting of the Lions Bay Council, it didn't appear that this consultation had in fact taken place, either formally or informally. It was revealed that the mayor had received a call from the minister at the time, basically informing that the community would be subject to the SVT. The reasons for adding our community were and remain unclear, as Lions Bay had not been vocal about housing pressures or clamoring to be subject to the SVT. It became apparent at the same meeting that or it was noted that our community doesn't apparently suffer from a vacancy problem. And there was a further discussion as to how residents could qualify for an exemption from the SVT when the requirements do kick in. And those questions couldn't be definitively settled at the time, owing in part to the complexity of the regulations. It should also be noted that in the 2014 to 2018 council term, that Lions Bay had successfully applied to be exempt from the SVT at that time. So I, in April, contacted the Ministry of Finance asking for some clarification as to how residents could be exempt from the SVT. And one of those would be exemptions would be the principal residence exemption. And I reported at the time that that is defined as the property where a resident spends more time than any other place in a calendar year. And that there's no prescribed time interval for residency at the residence. It simply has to be the residence you spend more time at any other residence. And that because there was some ambiguity as to when the regulations would kick in for us, that Lions Bay residents would be required to make their first declaration in early 2024 as to their use of their properties for this year. It should be noted that Finance Minister Conroy stated that to avoid the tax, property owners must occupy or rent their residences for at least a month at a time for a total of 6 months or more in a calendar year. Now, this statement could be interpreted as attaching the 1/6 month requirement to rental scenarios only, but it's been interpreted by some as attaching to non-rental or owner-occupied scenarios as well. So what would this mean? Potentially, it could mean that Lions Bay residents who are away from their properties for extended travel or visiting family or friends or overseas or consulting for a total of more than 6 months in a calendar year or for more than 1 month at a time could be deemed potentially to be in non-compliance with the principal residence requirement. I'm not saying that that's the case, but there does exist an ambiguity there that's concerning for people who do fall into that group, which I suspect is a significant proportion of residents. At a very minimum, there's a degree of uncertainty. And for people who spend their winters outside of Canada, either by choice or for health reasons or for work, this may be a great burden to them. The tax also appears to be partially targeted at foreign ownership, yet the percentage of foreign ownership in Lions Bay has never been demonstrated or reported to be a significant issue. Another problem is that if we're included within the SVT, it would also mean that the BC Ministry of Housing adds us to a list of 47 municipalities that are subject to the Provincial Housing Supply Act, since if we are part of the SVT zone. And this requires consultation with the listed municipalities as enforcement is rolled out, followed by a provincial housing target order and progress reports provided by the municipality. This is referred to as the naughty list by Housing Minister Calon. And in terms of, which would require approvals in Lions Bay for a mix of housing, including townhomes, multifamily dwellings, condos, and below market housing. Now, in terms of the 2022 housing needs report, which you all might remember was a skill testing question during our all candidates event, it's unclear how we would even be able to comply with this Provincial Housing Supply Act, since because of our land base and infrastructure challenges and the limitations that we face here, and also our rural designation under Metro's growth strategy. So Lions Bay's inclusion as a taxable area may also just be accidental due to the timing of our designation as rural. One of the strongest arguments, it seems to me, for against implementing the SVT for Lions Bay is our rural designation and being outside the urban containment boundary, which was approved by the Metro Board 1 week after the ministry announced that Lions Bay would be subject to the SVT. Lions Bay is the only community subject to the SVT in the Sea to Sky corridor, with the exception of Squamish, whose mayor had actively campaigned for inclusion, unlike Lions Bay, due to the housing crisis in Squamish. Nearby communities like Furry Creek and Britannia Beach are not subject to the SVT. And it seems to me that that's a circumstance which effectively places a red flag on Lions Bay, on all Lions Bay homes by comparison, devaluing them with respect to those in nearby communities. And arguably those communities are experiencing significant development or are about to, making them much more appropriate or perhaps legitimate targets for the SVT than Lions Bay. So in this respect, the SVT hits all of us, but it hits seniors even harder, who again may be spending their year elsewhere and may find themselves unable to comply. Just to wrap this up, it's worth noting that yesterday it was reported that the province will, in an effort to address the price and availability of long-term housing, be stepping in to regulate short-term rentals at a provincial level, an unusual move, and with enforcement in communities that are over 10,000 in population. This, it seems to me, is another piece in the argument that measures aimed at real estate speculation and vacancy are best focused on larger urban centers and not on a small community of our size. So the inclusion of Lions Bay as a designated area for the SVT, it seems to me, is a misapplication as per its intended focus on urban areas and centers. We were not effectively consulted before being included within the SVT. We're not demonstrably a target of speculative investment, nor are we awash in empty homes. And hence the SVT constitutes an unjustified burden on all residents and a further and greater burden on a significant proportion of our residents who are seniors. I have included a resolution in the package, and after some discussion with our CAO, in the interest and with his input, in the interest of coming up with something that's a little more brief and perhaps more helpful, I would propose an amended resolution, and you can all give me some input on that. And it would be quite simply that it be resolved that the province of BC be advised that the village of Lions Bay requests an exemption from the provincial speculation and vacancy tax, and that council directs the CAO to inform the province accordingly.
Okay.
Another wants to tinker with that, but that is a simplified version of what I had included.
Okay, you're putting that forward as a motion then?
I am indeed, yes.
Okay, second.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Councillor Abbott.
if I can go first, if anyone else is still gathering their thoughts. So Marcus, this amendment to the resolution, are you just trying to make it less prescriptive as to who we contact in the provinces so that we have some flexibility? I'm assuming that's what the intent was.
I think that's the intent. Also, there was some discussion that I had with Ross as to the wording, and that it does, so that it doesn't restrict us too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Ross could comment on why you suggested changing the wording.
Sure. So if I could acknowledge Councillor Reuter with respect to pulling together a beautifully written resolution. It is a very robust resolution, one that is required by UBCM. It has to have this format. But at the end of the day, for a council resolution, it needs to be more focused. You don't need all of the preamble that sets it up, which UBCM does require. So my recommendation was that a targeted action item, that council, that staff, whatever the case may be, in a more focused form would be more effective for the delivery of this objective. Hence, how it's rewritten.
Okay, Councillor Broughton.
Is there any alternative application process to be exempt as an individual or for hardship or, I mean, I read some of the letters that residents have sent in and it seems, long time family home at Brunswick's been there, the family has used it intermittently for multiple years. Is there any option for that? Because the intent of it, I think, is laudable, the original attempt, but certainly it's captured some people who I don't think it's helpful. So is there any way to apply for exemption that you're aware of?
I'm not. I'm perhaps not understanding the question. You mean for residents who are using their, in the case of residents who have seasonal residences here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or have a home in, have a home here and they may have because of their work, they may have a residence in Vancouver close to their work, that type of thing. And then they're kind of in the double bind as to which do they declare and so on.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
Any exam.
Yeah, I'm not aware, and the act is mind befuddling to read through and to try to navigate, but I'm not aware of any exemption that a resident who has a seasonal residence here could avail themselves of to become exempt as to the seasonality of their residence. I think that they would have to, there are a variety of other possible exemptions, working outside the country. I think there are a variety of them, but I don't think there's anything that specifically addresses that. And I do recall that there was a great degree of effort expended, I believe in Belcarra, by the mayor there. And that came to nothing because a lot of those are in fact seasonal residences, and the rental possibility, the way of the method of becoming exempt by renting the property was also difficult for people there because a lot of the properties were not insurable for rental purposes. And so, yeah, I'm afraid I'm not aware of any specific exemption that somebody can avail themselves of for a seasonal residence here. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Or dual residence, if they have if they spend 6 months of the year snowbirds and so on, who don't necessarily want to rent their home while they're away.
Yeah, and there have also been changes in the tenancy laws a few years ago by the provincial government that make it more difficult to rent your house out for limited periods of time. There was the withdrawal of a vacancy clause, for example, that would make it very difficult. I think one of the residents had written in and described a scenario where he might be standing outside his house and can't get back in because the rental contract is a month-to-month contract. So yeah, I'm not aware of any way of a seasonal home being
So I'm just
having
wondering if there's a way to break it down versus the whole village, or, is there some alternative to it? So.
Okay. Okay, Counselor Cunliffe, any comments? Any other further comments? Do we know how many residents are affected by this?
We don't have a specific number. I suspect, like many things that are rolled out by governments, federally and provincially, that we won't know until we receive that letter, and then suddenly we need to jump to comply. But I mean, we all know that there are a significant amount of seniors in the village. And anecdotally, I think we're all aware of those that may have some difficulty complying. So I would suspect that the shoe will drop at the beginning of the next year. But no, specific data we don't have.
And there's no significant cost for us to make this effort to reach out to the province. I would imagine you've done.
Yeah, they're
together a brief here. We present that. Is that the proposal?
That's the proposal. I mean, I'll continue to work with our MLA and staff. I mean, it should be noted, what's interesting is this will be a net outflow of capital out of the village that likely won't return to the village. The requirements are that the monies are used for affordable housing within the district or regional district, or in our case, in Metro. And I don't think anyone's anticipating Metro building affordable housing units in Lions Bay. So it will, in essence, be an outflow of capital. And not to overlook the fact that it does devalue everyone's property to some degree. If you're looking to sell your property next year, if I were a buyer, I might choose to buy a property in Furry Creek or Britannia instead, because I may not have to pay 0.5% or 2% of the value of the property in addition to my property taxes. So that would make an alternative, those properties perhaps more attractive.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, could I comment? I had a few comments, but then I just asked one question about the resolution, and then everyone else spoke, so I didn't actually bring up what I wanted to comment on. I think back to when we started down the urban containment boundary, and Mark was a resident at the time, was very involved in that, and went down that path. And in my mind, it was always about these things. In my mind, Metro have an urban containment boundary because they want to differentiate the areas A, where people develop, and B, where these kind of density housing issues are. And I kind of always hoped that that would be used as the demarcation. And we had one magic bullet to solve all those kind of woes where we keep getting found to be on the wrong side of a definition, the wrong side of the line. And I think this is another one, and we know of others that maybe come down that on various kind of issues. So yeah, I do think this is one of the ones where I just, they should focus on the areas that are inside the urban containment boundary and not have us to keep fighting this. And maybe that's a request at some point we need to go to Metro and say, why do you have that urban containment boundary if you just treat everyone on either side of the line as the same? Because they never seem to use it, except when we use it, when we raise our hands and say, why? So that's the one thing, and that's just an aside. Looking forward, Marcus, a lot of great research, good report, appreciate that. So I'm certainly in favour of us going forward with this with staff and Ross's help, because I don't think it's appropriate for Lions Bay.
Okay, good. Well, let's call the question. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, did you want me to provide the amended resolution one more time, or just email it? I can email it, yes. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 10D, and that's committees, Lions Bay Beach Park, and over to Councilor Conliffe and Councilor Bowden.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, I've provided information for council, one pager, I called it a one page and a bit. And it outlines the history of how we've come to where we are with the request for proposals. Council had asked that we provide more fulsome information to support the decisions that have been made by council. And so at this point, all council has been provided with the original request for proposals, the criteria and the process of assessment and the actual proposals received, and a documentation of the process undertaken that resulted in the recommendations that were made. What happened was the Lions Bay Beach Park group stepped up when there was just no staff available to prepare and disperse requests for proposals, and so what's happened over time is we've come to council, we've requested permission to put out RFPs. We've then screened them and made recommendations to council, which council has supported. And we're now moving to the next step where contracts need to be let and things need to be moving forward much more formally. All this was done ahead of us having a full-time CAO on site, and that we now have that in place, and very excited to be the committee has stepped up, done as much as they can do, and we now would like to pass back as much as possible the implementation and the authorization, I guess, of the moving forward with the beach park. So what's happened is the first opportunity we had, we wanted members of the committee to meet with the CAO, and the first opportunity that was possible was yesterday. So we met with Ross and had a great meeting. And as a result, what we will do is probably most of the committee would like to meet with council in a closed session at the next meeting and go over exactly the processes that we've been involved in, the vision that we have for the park, and seek any questions that council may have in terms of moving forward with this really quite amazing project that's come together. Michael?
Sorry, just if I could put a finer point on it. Regard to the reason for close, the only reason for close is because a substantial amount of the conversation would be around RFPs and contracts and matters of a confidential nature at this point. It's not just to talk about things that would normally come into an open session of council. It's for that purpose.
And just to clarify, are we meeting then in closed with the whole committee? Is that what you said?
We'd like to bring yes, we'd invite the whole committee, yeah.
Into a closed meeting? That seems
Sure.
rather chaotic.
I think they would only be here for that specific agenda item.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're looking at 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. To present
And there's
entertain any questions that you might have. And the committee would be five people, yeah. At a maximum of 5 people, yeah.
So that'd be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, so I would request 15 minutes in the closed session at the next, the November the 7th meeting.
For Blackwell.
Part of the reason so further to this meeting yesterday, part of the reason for this was my recommendation. And the purpose is to ensure that council is kept up to speed with regard to the process associated with this. Even though that there have been certain resolutions of council I suggested that nonetheless, it's still important to bring council along, to keep council updated. And again, as I've already stated, given that some of this material specific to this subject is of a confidential nature at this point, it needs to come into closed, but only for this specific scope of discussion.
Mhm. Our goal would be to make as much available as information as possible, such as the document that was in the minutes and in the agenda, I should say, which is available, fully available to the public.
All right, anything further you'd like to add? Good. Any questions?
Here I'll just speak a little bit to the information report we got tonight. So yeah, Michael, we provided a link to Google Drive on Friday, which had a significant amount of information, which is what I've been asking for a few months. That was most helpful, but I think to staff, a link to a Google Drive isn't receipt of the documentation, right? It needs to somehow be in some form controlled by staff. Can just lose a link to a Google Drive and then have nothing. But I went through all of that stuff. I'm not sure if anyone else did. I'm suspecting the other council either didn't manage, didn't get the time, but I did go through all of it. Took a bit of time. Yeah, it would have been great to have seen that in the beginning, because it would have made this conversation a lot quicker 2 months ago. I would like to comment on, firstly on the playscape RFP that was put together. I think it was really good. It was very well put together. I love the strategy that came out of that, by picking a budget number, explaining what everyone wanted and what the kids wanted, and then tasking the vendors or the bidders to see what they could squeeze under that number. That was a great idea and it clearly worked very well.
And it was a tremendous process where we actually had 4 vendors involved and they're all on site.
You had 3 that closed in there.
Sorry?
3 that closed in there or 4?
There were 4 invited, 4 showed up and 3 presented.
Yeah, 3 closed. Yeah. So that went very well. And if I look at that and how it was done in the budget, and I look at what I expect, she said there's a few changes to our policy, our procurement policy. That one seems to fit in there as intended. But I think the other one, once again, not critiquing the choice. No, the right choice was made, in my opinion. I probably would have made the same choice. I've spoken to Ross, but that one sits for me outside of our procurement policy. And is that what we're going to discuss in this future closed meeting?
Yes.
Because that one doesn't. Okay. All right. I won't go into that now. I wasn't going to review any names or facts anyway. But that remains.
Yeah, I think that's part of the discussion. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. I was just looking at the statement. Where 3 recommendations were approved by a majority of council, and I'm the one that wasn't on the majority in your 3rd paragraph down there. And just once again, it was a procedure concern I had. Nothing else. Not about the decision. Not about who was, whether the right person was awarded the bid. I've said that all along from when I was back in the meeting. Purely a procedural thing. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood. I'm not challenging the decision.
Right.
Just about how we go about it and how we get a binding contract. Okay, that's all I've got.
Okay, nothing further?
Well, I think we've made, incremental improvements starting from a very challenging kind of spot. And I think it's amazing what this committee has done. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Very proud of the outcome.
Lots of excitement, and I know the committee members seem to be enthusiastic about how things are going. So
Perfect.
good job.
Can I make a comment here to echo what Neville was saying about the receipt of the RFPs and the materials? I also had trouble with, I had some trouble with the Google Drive, and I don't think that is the appropriate venue or method by which to supply these materials to council. Indeed, the minutes of the last meeting state clearly that they were to be delivered into a closed council meeting. And that they don't form a part of the record. They're sitting on a Google Drive. So I think that these materials still need to be supplied into a closed council meeting so that the record can be preserved as to their presentation.
Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you. Completely agree with this. As alluded to, this was sounds to me very much like this was an imperfect process, given the fact that it was all hands on deck. However, going forward now, I'm delighted to be able to say that this gets to be handed off to Mr. Burr. And he will be the repository for all of these documents. Well, not him, but he will oversee the file folder within which all of these documents will exist. And we will then from that, I mean, not just these, everything to do with this project will be moved into that file folder. At the end of the day, this is a municipal project, so the municipality has to be able to demonstrate its due diligence. In part, they will do so by owning these documents and other things that I won't get into here. And so certainly once we have those, we can ensure that they're all printed off and made available in hard copy to be included as part of the agenda.
And so that would include then the consistency that we're looking for as to what was reflected in the minutes of the last meeting, namely that the RFPs be provided to council at an in-camera meeting, or that it does form a part of the record at the council.
All of them in those materials.
Very good.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Perfect. Thank
All
you.
right, we'll move to the next item, emergency services. We've got a placeholder here. Was there anything that was put forward? Not aware of. Okay, we'll move to item number 13, correspondence, and Councillor Cunliffe.
All right, so the first two from the workshop on homelessness, mental health, substance use. It's to be received. If anybody is interested in attending, there is a workshop locally in Richmond, November 2nd and 3rd. Second is this week's speakers program, so that is to be received as well. Moving forward to resident correspondence, some comments about parking and the validity of guest passes in pay zones. Some food for thought for when the parking committee is established. And then we have rainwater
So just to be clear on that one, the resident had it right. It was misquoted in the, right? So you just so people understand,
that you can park in
street parking, the
pay
pay
parking,
street
it's the
parking with a visitor,
it's the beach lots alone that
Beach
permit.
lots, Sunset lot and Kelvin. Yes.
Yes.
Hang on, not visitor, but resident permits, correct?
Yes, permits though, issued by a resident.
Visitor permits
Yes,
issued by a resident.
yes.
You can park, if you live somewhere like, various places on mountain, like this resident does.
Mhm.
There's no other place for your visitor to park
Yes,
other than in Flowbird pay parking. You
And-
are permitted to park in there
yes.
with the visitor pass.
And with your resident permit pass, you can also park
Yes, you can park.
in the pay parking area
Yes.
With the exception of
of,
Beach, KG, Lions Bay, beach parking lot and the trailhead.
the trailhead as well. Really?
I think, how many stalls are up there?
I think it is left now, we have to go back.
Yeah.
Trailhead, but maybe 8.
Yeah. Okay, rainwater harvesting. Maybe, I know at one point we did do like a bulk purchase of rainwater barrels that we were offering
Many years ago.
many, many years ago. So something to maybe
Can I make a suggestion?
take this to Carl.
Climate action.
Just start this at the Climate Action Committee, see what they think of it, that we're looking at lots of similarly aligned issues.
Perfect.
Okay.
There we are. And then we have a discussion on communications from resident Ms. Rogers, making some very fair points here. As per guidance from our CAO today, this is to be received, and we do look forward to a review of our communications policies when that time, you have the time to do so. And
Can I just jump in here? I think what the resident is pointing out is that we have an inconsistency.
that's what I was saying, but
Right, and so until we have that review and have discussed it and agreed and thrown something together, we will continue to have residents asking questions and I suppose we need to have some kind of procedure in place in the
Well,
interim.
I believe that we did have a conversation last council meeting about resident communication and whether it is to be included in an agenda package.
I think those were the responses, right?
I think there was.
Mr. Blackwell, you've probably got experience on these communication policies. Do you have any ideas that you could bring forward to the next meeting?
Mirror the same sort of, is public participation.
This is a deep pool of water. So at one end of the pool, there's always a risk of liability with regard to local government saying the wrong thing, whether they know they're saying it at the time, whether it's said by accident, it can lead to problems. Typically not associated with standard agenda items because these things are somewhat choreographed insofar as that council knows what's on the agenda, council's aware of the issues, council's briefed on the things that they need to know about. Where the risk starts to occur is when stuff is hurled at council out of the blue, and people and council may try to assuage their concerns, and in so doing, say things that can create problems. It's because council's a quasi judiciary body. So there's a duty of care that's owed to anybody with regard to anything that comes from council. It's a big responsibility. And so normally there's value in ensuring that there's structure around how these discussions occur to make sure that what is said is accurate, timely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when it comes to like communications as they exist in your procedures bylaw, I would argue it's problematic. It's significantly problematic. And I'm not saying for a second that members of the community shouldn't have access to council and staff. Absolutely they do. I would defend that to the nth degree. Absolutely. It's not about if, it's about when. It's about context. And as I've alluded to before, in my experience, many local governments don't engage in discussion at all with regard to the council meeting and the business before council. But where they do, it's after the close of the formal meeting, and it's specific to questions pursuant to the agenda for clarification. That sort of goes a long way to start to contain that question of liability and other things as well. But again, that's not to preclude the opportunity for residents, the community at large, to be able to reach out, connect, and have dialogue with council. It's about what are the best tools, what are the most appropriate tools for that, and that's sort of what I would be including as part of a report for council's consideration about how to rely more on best practice around how to engage, when to engage, what are all the tools for engagement. And I guess to summarize it, it's sort of a blunt tool that council is using to engage with the community in this sort of format.
So Ross, go ahead.
I was just going to say, at least we didn't address the question Marcus asked, and I'm reading this again, I had read it before. And the reason is actually asking, and we can have asking for some consistency. So between now and getting your review of all our policies and coming up with a new policy and whatever, what are we going to do? How are we going to? Is there an all or nothing option? Or I guess we're going to continue to try give everyone the same sort of fair assessment of their questions and answers as best we can. Is that what we, I mean, it's the suggestion. We're not responding the way we did a while ago. Clearly not. But I don't think we need to, in the interim, just, make sure that we actually do it evenly.
Can you put some just rough guidelines together? Sure. So that we can sort of get some consistency going, because I think we all appreciate that it's not fair for people. You know, we even saw it today. We weren't sure what.
The squeaky wheel seems to get the grease, I suppose, and I think it's fair of those that are less squeaky that aren't getting responses. But I agree with Ross's statement that we should not be ad hoc answering and responding to things that we have not had an opportunity to put a lot of thought into. So I guess the answer to this particular resident would be that it is forthcoming to have consistency in communications for all residents. Would that be fair to say?
Through you, yes, I'll bring forward some preliminary considerations for council, and what I'll try to do, in fact, if I can, is circulate them to council before the meeting for input and for fine tuning. So it's less of a on the fly discussion, and we can maybe have that discussion in the background. So it's more of a formalized consensus based solution as an interim measure, if council's comfortable with that.
All right, and
Russ, just a comment to what you said. I mean, you've commented on you've raised the specter of liability by referring to us as a quasi judicial body. I mean, I don't recall us being the subject of lawsuits as a result of exchanges, responses to residents. It is messy, but democracy is messy. And there's a precedent in this village for people being able to bring questions. And in this case, you know, a question has been posed multiple times without answer. You know, knowing what it's like to be on the other side of the table, being confined, for example, to only bringing a question that's related to an agenda item shuts a lot of things out. I'm concerned that we err on the side of messiness, perhaps, in the interest of being open and accountable.
Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you. The decision to rest with council, certainly not with me by any means. All I can do is advise. What I would tell you, what I observe is that council's trying to be all things to all people. Council meetings are for council business, period. Trying to take other engagement scenarios and squish it into a council meeting is weird. It's not how it works. You need to stick to council business. Should you open the floor to engagement afterwards? Absolutely. You can close the meeting and sit here and have a chat after council meeting on anything you want. My recommendation is don't provide advice ahead of having the time to reflect on things. Many councils, in fact, have policies that say that council will never make a resolution on the day of a delegation. That there must be one council meeting in between for exactly the reason I'm sending out. So, you know, by no means would I ever want to think of foreclosing the dialogue. It's just about what is the best choreography to make that happen that protects the public's interest to be able to access council, very important, and council ensuring that it does its business in the correct order. Council business, which is a function of what's on the agenda, because you can't control what's on the agenda if stuff's coming at you randomly. Now you have all kinds of other things that indirectly get added to your agenda. And council, it can be very awkward for everybody. And there's the specter of that liability, as I say, and there has been litigation around commitments, promises, suggestions said, direction given that's been inaccurate or disclose information that should have been. It's not common. But my point is, you can still have that engagement. It's just in the right format. But at the end of the day, it's entirely up to council as to what it prefers.
Point taken.
So I would say, we've gone through a year of messiness and I would prefer to see us focus on the business of the village. And if there is a way to streamline the business of council and to give us some, again, best practices is kind of a broad brush, but give us some normalcy to it. I think everyone in the village would prefer that. And, we didn't speak about it, but we attended that conference on Friday and we've listened to the various mayors from Howe Sound and West Vancouver and North Van. And there's a lot of uplifting stories out there. It's encouraging. And I think once we get on track, hopefully our story is going to be uplifting. So I prefer to move away from the messiness if we can.
And with that being said, let's end on a positive note that we would like to thank, is it Trudy Luthi and Brenda Broughton that are organizing the Lions Bay Remembrance Day ceremony, which will be on November 11th, beginning at 10:30 a.m., but please show up early. With the Mayor Barry provide a Remembrance Day address, as is the custom. And so we look forward to that. It is a very well-attended village event, one of the best.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Mr. Blackwell, you've got a question?
I just wanted to point out new business.
Yes.
There was something that I circulated to council earlier. I just thought. Yeah, so I just don't want to lose sight of that. It's a request for some funding. So I just, because it's not written in here, I just wanted to.
Do you want to speak to it or?
It's self-explanatory. I certainly, when it comes to that point,
Sorry, I don't know if I've. He may have.
I'd like to speak to both page 3 and page 9, which is the National Event Speakers Program and the Remembrance Day ceremony. We have some absolutely amazing people in this community who year over year have spoken, and I believe some of the same will be speaking again this year. So it really is going to be quite an amazing event. So as it always has been, and encourage all councils to attend if possible.
Okay, does everyone have the request that Ross in front of us?
Yeah, which one is this?
So just to stay on,
Yes, October 16th.
it's a request for flower money.
So just to confirm that we've moved to item number 14, new business. And so if I could present on that.
Yes.
Thank you. Briefly, as I sent earlier today by email and then provided again hard copy. This is a request with regard to the Remembrance Day event. Request is that the village increase its contribution for flowers from $100 to $130. There's sufficient money in the grant and aid GL to facilitate that, but it would require a resolution of council.
I'll put forward that resolution.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Nothing. Okay. Okay, with that, we'll move to the public participation. Gallery first.
One thing I'd like to show my appreciation for all of the SDT. I think we'll use it as seniors, but I think it's thoughtful of you to looking out for seniors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone in the gallery? No hands up. Okay, with that, motion to adjourn the meeting or to move into close.
Move into close, yeah.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Carried.
Oh,
Did you get that? We take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break.
we missed somebody.
Oh, we have a
We're just saying that.
Hand up.
We're gonna.
Casey Dyer.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Get Casey next meeting.